Well, hello everyone. This is Dr. Song of New Covenant Academy, joined by Pastor Ted, and we are continuing with part 2 of our podcast on the 5 essential elements of high-achieving students. In the first part, we talked about 3 aspects, and they are physical fitness, motivation, and good study skills or intellectual development. And this session, we're going to talk about 2 other aspects, and I'll begin with the first one here. So this is the 4th element of the 5 elements of high-achieving students, which is prioritization. And I think what I mean by that is knowing what's more important and beneficial in the long run. So prioritization has to do with figuring out what's important and what's not, and put it in a rank or order, and then really the most important part, holding yourself accountable to that.
Yes.
And I know that children and adults have different priorities. I think if someone were to ask me what my priorities are today, it would be God, family, and friends. God, family, and friends. I don't know. Then everything else kind of comes into, they all fall under below that. But if you ask our teenagers or even younger kids, what's the most important thing in your life? I mean, I've heard kids say things like Roblox to my computer to, yeah, I've heard my computer a lot. My computer is important to me, or my cell phone. They don't have the right priorities. And it's our job, right, as teachers and adults to really tell them, hey, those aren't the most important things in your life. And give them opportunities to rank and order what's really, really important.
Yeah. Like you said, how do you rank the important values of your life? God, family, friends, great. I have a little twist on that. God, definitely. But family, I've compartmentalized it. I would say wife and then kids. Here's the reason why. I should be an empty nester, even though my older one lives with us in our house. Our lives are very different. He's more interested in his friends than us, right? On a Thursday night, his priority is to find something to do with his friends rather than stay home and have dinner or watch TV with his mom or me. And what hurts me a lot is that my wife is the other way. She really wants to spend time with him. She sees that his childhood, before he gets married, is coming to an end. She wants to spend more time, go on vacation together, eat more, and all that stuff. So I prioritize my wife more because I see her being so committed to him, but she's not receiving the same commitment. So I try to be more committed to her.
I'm absolutely in agreement with you.
Yeah. So, but like you said, kids have different priorities. Yeah. I asked a question like, hey, if your house caught on fire, what would you grab? Number one thing kids these days?
Cell phones.
They would grab their phone and computers, one of those, technological tools. Rather, like for us, it used to be pictures.
Well, there was a time when my house was less than, our houses were, we were 50 feet away from wildfire.
Right.
And when the fire department came and knocked on our door and said, you got 5 minutes to vacate, leave, I didn't go and get the large screen TV. I didn't go grab the computers. I grabbed one, wife and kids, and then photos. I think I just grabbed the albums and we took off. Because that's memory. Family is more important to me than anything else.
So my kids were helping me, the same fire. Kids were helping me grab stuff, and they were saying, well, what do we grab? What do we grab? And I told one of my kids to grab a little case we had with all the documents,
Right.
So I told them to grab that. And then they go, what do we grab? We still had, 5 minutes is a pretty long time, actually. And I said, grab photos. And my younger son started taking pictures off the wall. And I said, well, that's not what I meant. But so we got pictures. But if they had it their way, they would have grabbed their computers, their phones, what have you. And we had a dog at the time. I said, go grab the dog.
Sure.
Go grab the dog, right? Because it's a living being. I don't want it to burn up. So we grabbed the dog and off we went. And, so priorities, I asked kids, hey, what would you do in a fire? And they would say, well, I'll grab my computer.
Yeah.
I go, what about your mom?
Yeah.
What about whatever? And they go, well, my mom probably is already out there,
Right.
so I'm not gonna. But you can tell that their priorities are not on important things.
Right. So when we have these students at school and we talk to them as to why the academics is important, I think some kids might think that, well, it's important because of going to college. But I don't think college, and I never say that college is the end of one's goal or the ultimate goal. It's just a path. So it's a stepping stone towards something greater. And not everybody needs to go to college to do great things in life. So I try to tell the kids that your priority is really should be similar to that of any decent adult with the right mindset, especially as a Christian: faith, family, and then some people put work, right? But I think I like to put friends there first. But I think the next part, I would say the fourth aspect, in my opinion, is either career, ministry, whatever we do, teaching, profession. And for students, it's got to be academics, because that's who they are. They're students, right? They're not athletes. They're not. They don't have jobs like they're going to be doing things for the rest of their lives. They're students. They're learning something. They're studying something and looking for opportunities or paths or careers or college or whatever. Some of those doors are going to open up for them, but they have to be prepared. But that's not their priority. Their priority is immediate self-gratification, right? Pleasure, games, maybe hanging out with friends. But sometimes too much, right?
So just an example, I mean, we're not a really high-achieving athletic school. We would like to be, because it's important to be well-rounded that way. But I remember one year when we did rather well on the basketball team. And these kids were so fixated on doing well in basketball, they forgot why they were here at school. So they wanted to skip instruction and do more practices or whatever. And I said, hey, your first responsibility here is to be a good student, because you're a student. That's your occupation, if you will. And I had to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. Academics and going to college isn't everything, but now in this time and age, having college education is basically the elementary education that they need.
Equivalent of having high school education some 20, 30 years ago.
So I said, you might not need it and you might not even use it, but you need to at least get that college education, because it opens doors. And a lot of things, like let's say you want to do something, most worthwhile companies require a bachelor's degree.
So going back to the basketball issue, would you say that, and I think this is a fair statement, I'm sure you would agree, that we may have more permanent priorities, whereas the students, their priorities are constantly changing. And it's really almost selfish, right? Like, what do I like and what at the moment? What will I... And especially when the students become teenagers, how do my friends and the opposite gender, how do they think of me? What's their perception of me? So those kind of things and it's unfair for them to have a really, really permanent priority. But I think we do need to tell them that some of those priorities that they feel are important to them at that age and at that moment are really secondary, tertiary, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh kind of a... They should come into that list in that order rather than being at the top.
Like we said, academics isn't everything, but that should be their primary occupation.
They're spending 46 hours, 60 hours a week on it every week.
So like, school life is academics, social life, athletics, and all these different things, but you have to rank them in order of importance. And at our school, if the kid is suffering academically, we don't let them play sports.
And we have a high requirement.
It's public schools, you have to have a 2.0.
C.
Not us. you have to do much better than
Yeah,
that.
I think we're at 3.0 or 3.3.
If we see them, we don't have a set GPA, but if a kid is a pretty much straight A student and now they're getting 2, 3 Bs, then we get on them.
Yeah, they shouldn't slip because of the athletics.
But not to say that those things aren't worthwhile. I think it helps to well-round the student. That team that really did well, they happened to be my son's team as well as your son Timothy's team. So sometimes they gather, and sometimes I get to talk to them. Even at a funeral that we were all at, they were like, Pastor Ted, wasn't that year fun? And they talk about it, and they root themselves together in that memory. So it's cool, and it's awesome to have that kind of success. But they can all enjoy having that kind of conversation because they
all made it to college.
They all made it to college, and they, relatively speaking, none of them slipped, and they're good individuals. Yeah. So yeah, prioritizing to one's circumstance, it's important. Yeah.
So the other aspect of prioritization is managing your time, right? Because yes, you place certain things in the right order, and now you have to manage each day. The 24 hours that God has fairly given to every single person, every person has to manage their time well. Right. And I think that's where parents come into conflict with students, their own children, because they're saying, well, place academics on a higher priority than your games, if you will, and take care of that before you play games or don't play at all. But the kids will say invariably, well, let me play the games first and then I will study, right? Until wee hours in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. So they try to negotiate these things with the parents, and I think it's a non-negotiable. I think the kids students are being selfish, and if there's any student who's watching this, and you may think, well, you don't understand. No, I do understand, because you're missing the point. So time management is important, and I think the vast majority of students actually waste a lot of time.
Sure.
So when somebody asks me how I manage time, I didn't know that the system that I thought was my own system has a name behind it, and it's supposed to be something that Elon Musk is using. They call it the time blocking. I share this with our teachers without even knowing that it's called time blocking. So what I do is I brainstorm as to, geez, what are all the things that I need to do today? Write that down, and then prioritize it, highlight it, and then I look at my daily calendar, 9 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., by every 30 minutes, and I start to go like, I'm going to meet this person at 10 o'clock, I'm going to finish this task at 1 o'clock, I'm actually going to finish this by 3 o'clock, and just kind of lay things out so I kind of know where I'm going rather than, geez, what am I going to do today? And just start addressing everything that comes to my mind. Because there are some things that I can't do at the moment, some things that need to be scheduled because it needs to get done with other people in play. So this time blocking, if you want to look it up, I'm not promoting this product, but there's even a time blocking planner that they sell at Amazon. So there's a way to manage your time more effectively. I don't think that everything in life has to go onto the to-do list and gets checked off, because life isn't like that. But having some general outline as to what that day is going to look like because of your priorities have been set straight and you have ordered them and you have kind of scattered them throughout the day as to when to do what task. I think that's going to be very helpful, and I think that's something that our students need to learn.
Yeah. So like you, there's lots of systems out there, and not using it, I think, is the biggest mistake. I used to be really religious about this. I haven't in a while, but there was a thing called a life scheduler. It basically not only tells you to block out times, but tells you to write out the vision, the reason why you're doing it. And write that down, and afterwards you review it and see if that vision got met as you did this or not done, whatever it is. So I had my staff, when I was pastoring a much larger church and I had many staff, do the same thing. I said, I can't tell you every day to do this or do that. I want you to write out what you want to do or what needs to be done according to your job. And then write out your own vision, your own motivation, if you will. So it's a combination of motivation as well as prioritization. And it worked well. And now, even though I don't write it down, that's how I think.
Yeah.
So you have it blocked out in hours. I honestly don't. I have it blocked out in the morning, the afternoon, in the evening.
I do it by 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty
I
good.
know.
Yeah.
I've shared my planner with some people, and they're like, oh my God, how do you live like this? But I've gotten to a point where if I don't do that, I usually drop things. I drop the ball here and there, and that sometimes could mean something more significant and more serious as your leadership responsibility grows.
And obviously, you are in charge of many staff.
Right.
So I think you need to be that meticulous. Whereas I work largely independently of everybody else.
Well, so, but the point is, even for our students, we need some kind of we recommend having some kind of a priority list that's pretty, I would say, cross-cultural. And it's really not about age, but it's really what a decent individual would need to have.
Well, I'm not saying I don't organize stuff. Like I can tell you, like, hey, what Mondays are for.
Right.
Monday, I can tell you my priorities get a good night's sleep, because over the weekend I do ministry and I just, people need downtime. So Mondays, almost every day I'm not in here at the crack of dawn because I gotta do my pastoral work. Yeah. But then Monday morning, I don't make videos for my church that I do every other day. I get a good night's sleep. I wake up sometimes 9 o'clock, which is a rarity because I'm usually up by 4:30. So I feel refreshed. And then I come here and then I work on Monday morning. I'm working on the Friday chapel. There's a series going on, but I work on the message. Usually I'm done with my teaching outline and script on Monday. And in the afternoon, I look at the emails that came in over the weekend from Fridays, whatever that I deal with, athletics here. So get that done. And then on Tuesday, I start, on my message at church.
But whether it's your system or my system or somebody else's system, I think if we asked the vast majority of our students, do you have a system in place? I think the answer is going to be no.
Yeah. Definitely is no for most kids.
And there have been times when, I think you remember, we used to create those planners and hand out to all the students, but none of them will use them. And they're actually thrown here and there, even though school paid for it, and say, hey, here's a gift, you got to use it.
That was a great planner, too.
And they wouldn't use it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some level of maturity has to come into prioritizing things and sticking to the plan. And I think that's what we want to develop as early as middle school and certainly by high school. Because when they're beyond high school and on their own, imagine what college is like. Mom's not there. Dad's not there.
Right.
Pastor Ted's not there. Dr. Song certainly isn't there. I sometimes wish that I should make a portrait of myself and like give it to the graduates so they could put it on the wall. They might use it as a dartboard, but something that says almost like I'm watching you, like Uncle Sam. Well, no one's there, so they have everything is up to them, and if they're not self-managing, I think that's one of the reasons. That's probably the key reason why kids fail at college and drop out.
I hate to keep talking about my kids, but you know this.
Did your son fail?
No.
Okay.
When they were in college, you know this. I used to have them write me an email every day. Do you remember that?
Yes.
My son hated it, but I said, I want you to tell me what you did, what you have to do today, and what you're going to do tomorrow. So the reason why I did that is because I wanted to have them be accountable. It's one thing to not go to class. It's another thing to not go to class and tell your dad you went, right? So sometimes my kids were good about it. they would skip class and write down, I didn't go to class. What I was going to do, what I did, and I would ask them, hey, how come you didn't go to class? Well, and then I would get on them. And the things I tell our seniors, I don't know if you remember, I said, hey, when you go to college, you go to class, and if you don't fall behind your reading, you're ready, you're academically capable of handling it. But once you start missing classes and fall behind on reading, it's not like high school, you're reading few pages, you're reading sometimes hundreds of pages. And if you fall behind a week or two, you're behind 400 pages. You're never going to catch up. So I had them on
and
schedule.
Sadly, some of these larger public universities, almost in my opinion, promote students from not showing up because they start selling notes.
Right.
There are professional note takers. In case you miss a class, you pay only like $1 or $2, $1.50 or something, and you could get that class note delivered to your email box. And I think that just kind of gives wiggle room for the kids to not show up to class. I think that's deadly over time.
Yeah, so that system got my kids to not skip many classes. I mean, they could have lied and said they went, but like I said,
your kids are not going to lie.
It's tough to not go and then write to your dad, you did go. And they all finished in 4 years, which is a rarity these days. And they did well. And I asked them, and they said, well, they didn't like it, but they were grateful.
Well, you held them accountable.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we're talking about the 5 elements of highly effective students, in the first part of the podcast, we talked about physical fitness, motivation, and having good intellectual development / study skills. And in this podcast, we're talking about having setting priorities, and then holding yourself accountable to it, and having a system so that you could execute and manage your time.
Right.
Okay. So all these areas require probably very extensive discussions. We could probably talk about each one at great length, but due to the time constraints, we are trying to minimize and just share our personal experiences and insights so that this will be much, much easier for you to digest. The last component that we want to talk about is having good relational skills. I think relational skills will take people so much more further in life than just being smart or just being good at something that they know how to do. You got to know how to get along with others. Your nomad is an island. You can't do things on your own. So at NCA, what we're trying to teach our students is to have a good relationship with friends, also good rapport with the teachers, because we're not against our students, we're for them. We're on their team, but they sometimes misperceive us as it's us against them, it's teachers against the students kind of thing. But we're not. And even at home too, I think the students sometimes misperceive parents as, oh my gosh, these parents are just nagging old people who's out to get me. They're infringing on my freedom, and they're restraining me. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out of the house when I go to college. They don't realize that they need to first of all figure out who's really for them, who's really for them. And if you objectively look at students, if they look at their life, the people who are surrounding them, usually the adults, say teachers, parents, pastors, grandparents, uncles, they're all for them. We may not give into every desire that they may have, but we're really trying to speak sense into them, share our wisdom with them. So if those students respond positively, say to me, boy, I have so much more I want to give them. There's so much more wealth of information and wisdom I want to share. Open doors for them, if you will. But if they think that I'm against them, they don't even make eye contact. They show attitude, when you point something out like a dress code or something or haircut, they throw their head back and roll their eyes. Their body language speaks so much loudly about how they feel about what I'm doing for them. And then, I'm a human being too. I want to be consistently consistent supporting, but sometimes I'm like, hey, if you hate it that much, maybe I want to stay out of your life. So building that relationship with others is critical. Now, you're a pastor and you're a relational building person.
Right.
What do you think is one thing that you want your students to know? What is the one thing about building a relationship with you or with others that you really want to teach them and guide them?
It's actually a real thing that I do all the time. I said, you got to commit to the relationship.
Huh.
You can't expect people who say they love you and care about you to always chase you and give you things you need. You got to also be committed in that relationship. So I tell the kids, I will hardly ever summons you from your class to have a conversation unless there was an issue. But if you want to grow our relationship, you have to come into my office and you have to talk to me. So I said, I'm open. I have a little sign on my door that says, welcome, come on in. Then I have one that says, I'm out, or I'm, do not disturb.
Or something.
But my door is almost always open. And I said, you got to commit to it and come in. And we have silly talks. I make fun of them sometimes. But we have, in those conversations, it ends up being a fruitful one because those conversations lead to something more meaningful.
Something that I found recently in academic research is that people with good people skills who know how to develop good relationships are much, much happier people.
Sure. Yeah.
Now that sounds obviously right,
Yeah.
but we don't really think of it that way. Sometimes we think that as long as you're good at something, the people are going to just like you automatically, and they're going to gravitate towards you, and they're going to consider you a leader or the best player or the best person in the company. But you could be the best person in the company in terms of production or the value you bring to the company, but you might be that one person that everybody hates.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a healthy place that you want to be in.
And also kids are finding out, these college-bound kids, they come and tell me, Pastor Ted, can you write me a recommendation? I said, you know what? I will be kind and warm, but I have to be honest. And I will write you one. And I tend to write more favorable ones than probably what they deserve.
But it's difficult to...
But I said, you can't come and ask me if you don't have a relationship with me. I still do it because I'm a pastor.
And part of our responsibility.
I tell the kids now, you're going to have to ask for recommendation letters from your teachers. I said, we don't have a lot of students here, but, the science teacher or the history teacher, him and her, they're going to get lots of requests for recommendation letters. And if you don't have a relationship with them, I know they'll probably still write you one, but how much more would they write with enthusiasm when you're good with them, when you have a rapport with them, when you have a relationship with them? So I tell them even now, I don't want you to go and kiss their behinds, but go and develop a relationship. Say hi, talk to them. They're human beings.
Make eye contact.
And share life together. When you do that, people will be more favorable. People succeed in careers more, not because of where they graduated from, but how they perform when they get into those jobs.
Because you want to build a relationship.
Right.
And as you said, it's not some momentary, superficial thing. You're really trying to connect with people, pardon me. And that connection requires commitment, but it also sometimes requires manners.
Yes, absolutely.
Good manners.
Yeah.
Every morning when
I think Jason and I are good friends because we don't overstep our friendship. Does that sound right?
Yeah, we have a certain respect for each other.
Yeah.
More practically, even in the mornings when I greet students getting out of the car and coming on campus, there are kids who have their earbuds on, who won't make eye contact, who won't dress properly, and when you say good morning, they grunt. They don't say hi. And it's difficult to love students like that.
Yeah.
But then there are those who would at least smile and greet and say hello. And golly, there are kids who will say, how are you doing today? Or they might say, oh, I like your tie. As much as I say, I like the ribbon on your hair, they said, I like your tie. You know, just that kind of just casual talk.
Being nice, kind.
Yeah. So I think relations will open so many doors for so many students. And that requires the students to be, in my opinion, less selfish and looking at life a little bit less from their own perspective and understanding that there's that mutuality, there's that relationship component, there's that, hey, you know, I scratch your back and you could scratch my back. I think that's a fair thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Isn't there a phrase that says, take care of the people around you and then they'll take care of you?
Right.
It's the golden rule principle.
Sure.
Jesus said it so aptly. So we're going to conclude with that. But just recap the 5 elements of highly effective students, high achieving students is physical fitness, motivation, study skills or intellectual development, fitting to their grade level and you know what they need to do at school, prioritization and time management, and relational skills. As I said, these individual components could be discussed at length, hours at a time, with thousands and thousands of different examples and stories. But we hope that people who have watched this podcast are going to get it and think about those 5 things. And if you're a parent, think about how you're doing with these 5 topics, and then relate that to the kids, your own children, and work on it. These things require work.
Right.
It's not something that comes automatically to us, and we have to even force ourselves to work on it. And I want to thank Pastor Ted for joining this podcast and sharing his insight. And we hope that you will continue to stay tuned to some of our additional podcasts that will be coming, and they will be very helpful to parenting and guiding our children to become the leaders that we expect them to be. So thank you once again, and this is Dr. Song of New Covenant Academy with Pastor Ted. Have yourself a good day.